And while they were in Moab, tragedy hit. Naomi loses her husband. Her sons get married to 2 Moabite women, and 10 years later, her sons pass away as well. And just leaving her with the 2 daughter-in-laws from Moab, Orpah and Ruth. And I just thought about this as we go through serious problems. And being a community ministries pastor, a lot of people come in and they're hurting. They're either going through physical ailment, they're going through financial situations, and a lot of times when suffering hits, have you ever had the rapture mindset? Lord, I'm done, just take me home. It hits us. And that's where we're going to find Naomi tonight. This is what she's struggling with. She has literally just thrown her hands up and she's done. She's just waiting for the Lord to take her home. And what should our mindset be? So this is why I picked Ruth, because it goes so well with what we learned in Philippians, with what Paul was teaching. His heart was this in Philippians 1:23 and 24. It says, I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better, but to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith. Even in Paul's suffering, his desire, his heart's motivation was to point others to Jesus. And that's my first question for us tonight, is in every circumstance, are we pointing people to Jesus? Is our life positioned in such a way? And to do that in those circumstances, that joy can only come from a real relationship with God the Father, knowing Him in the right way. So let's look at how Naomi deals with tragedy, and how she reacts tells us quite a bit of how her relationship is with God the Father. Ruth 1:6-7 says this, Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited His people and had given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughter-in-laws, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. This first word in here, return, you're going to see actually through the whole chapter. It's repeated 12 times. And the root word is the same, but the ESV changes it from return or turn or go or bring back. So 12 times the ladies are faced with a decision of which way they're going to go. Am I going to go back, or am I going to follow Naomi? And it's symbolic to the New Testament principle that once we are born again, we are new creations. The old man has passed away. Everything is dead. Are we going to follow Him, or are we going to turn back? And Jesus puts it best when He says in Mark 8:34, And calling the crowd to Him with His disciples, He said to them, If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up this or his cross and follow me. Our old life has to die. And that's what all 3 of these ladies through chapter 1 are having to deal with. What is going to be my choice? And each one makes a different decision. So something that is vitally important to understand, a battle for our faith is not won in our big decisions. It's won and lost in the small decisions that we make every day. Because even Naomi, she makes the right, correct, big decision. She's going to return to Bethlehem. She's going to return to the promised land, to the fellowship with other believers. But then she fails in a bunch of small decisions throughout this whole chapter. She did not catch it in the small moments. So looking at this story, how do we overcome an onslaught and a bombardment of influences that try to drive us away from God, which is trying to do to Naomi through this whole chapter? And the first thing, as I looked at Naomi, we have to understand that our spiritual battle is in the mind. We are under bombardment from both sides, good and bad. Jesus is trying to get His word in. Everything under the sun, from creation to Satan himself, is bombarding us with other outside influences to try to drive us away from Him. So we are not the warriors in this. We are actually, our mind is the battleground for this battle. And who are we going to allow to take our mind? Is it going to be Christ and His mindset, or is it going to be Satan? 2 Corinthians says this, 10:5-6. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. We have to hold each and every thought, each one of these decisions, 12 times. They had to hold this light or this decision up to the Word of God. Does it fit? Is this what I should be doing? And the one thing that you'll see is only one of them was saying, no, this is the right way to go. And the second thing is, as we see here with Naomi, we have to stay in fellowship with other believers. When did she get in trouble? When she went to Moab, when she went where she was not supposed to go, the land of sin, the land of idols, the land of just foreign gods. And what happened? She got isolated. And any good enemy is going to pick somebody apart by isolating them and then making them their most vulnerable because there's no support system. So that's how she got in trouble. The Bible tells us, don't forsake assembling yourselves together. When we're going through hard times, when we're suffering and we don't feel like going to church and we don't feel like being around other Christians, we have to push ourselves. Like 1 or 2 Corinthians says, we destroy arguments. That's an argument that says, no, I'm going through something that I don't need to obey God's word and be in fellowship. No, throw it down, cast it down. So, not to sugarcoat it, Naomi's going to lose her first battle here in chapter 1. And she's going to lose it pretty badly. She's going to lose it because she didn't guard her mind. And she's going to lose it because she became isolated altogether. And the worst thing to me is she actually loses her witness to her 2 daughter-in-laws through this whole thing in the first chapter. But the beautiful picture is God is not done chasing Naomi's heart. He is desiring her bittered, hurt, broken heart through all this, and He wants to win her back, and He's going to use Ruth to do it. So let's pick it up in verse 8. But Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." So Naomi is serving the living God. She knows all the stories. She knows creation. She knows Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses. She knows Joshua, all these things. She knows the law. But she is still, what is she doing? She's turning these girls from the only living God, the only person who can save them, and saying, no, it's better for you to go back and serve your old life. It's better for you to go back. Now, before we get too harsh on Naomi's efforts here, there's one thing that stands out to me. It's what the girls say. Because even though she's pushing them away, the first thing out of their mouth is, "No, we will return with you to your people." So apparently Naomi and her sons and her husband had a ministry to these 2 girls. They actually, their life at some point was a light to them. They looked at what Moab was offering and the way that Naomi and her family was working, the way they loved each other. And they said, there's something different. There's something more to this life than what we learned in our old ways. So that's why they're saying, look, no, we want to do what we've seen in you. We've seen it when your kids were alive. We saw it when your husband was alive. We want what you have. Take us to your people. And that's why God chose Israel in the first place, to make them stick out to the entire world that there is a real God in the land of Israel. He is real. And Naomi is forgetting her purpose in life here. So are we living a life that makes people wonder, why are they different? Why do their family, why does it work when they're going through things and mine doesn't? Why do my ways just always blow up in my face? Do we live that life? Let's pick it up in verse 11. But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that you may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they're grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So here we go, a second time. Naomi is totally denying. She's pushing the daughters away. They're crying out to her, "Let me stay with you." And she's saying no. And it's revealing something about Naomi and her own relationship with God. She is literally the God of her own life. Remember, she's been the keeper of the law. She is underneath a works-based religion. What does works say? If I keep these rules, if I do these statutes, God will be happy with me. Well, she's kept the rules, she's kept the statutes, and now suffering's enter her life. So for the first time, she has had this religion that I do this and God will not punish me. He will protect me. Well, it's been ripped away from her. Her idol in her life, which is her own works, her own strength, what she can bring to the table, her own ability to save herself through what she's doing has been lost. She's having to cope with this for the first time. Her God has been revealed, and that God is self-righteousness. She's dealing with, I have become self-centered. It's all about me and what I can do. And what is she struggling with? She's saying here in the chapter, I have nothing left to offer you, ladies. It's all gone. She's coming to the realization, I am not really God here. I have nothing to offer you. And when you go through works and that type of religion, that type of faith that I need to earn my way to heaven or I don't have real security, it gives you the wrong impression of who God is and what He really thinks of you. So she says this statement, the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. This has to be a horrible place, trying to win God's approval by doing stuff. It has to be hard. And one of the first things I've always taught in counseling or new believers, I ask people, especially when they're going through hard times or they're just coming right off the street, and I just say, hey, if you had a moment to sit down and God was looking at your life right now, what would be His facial expression? And they would say, well, He's probably sad, or He's mad at me, or He's angry, or He's just disappointed in my life. And it's a huge thing for them to realize when you use scriptures like Romans 5:8, but God shows His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And they finally get to understand, no, wait a minute. God's face, when you were a sinner, when you were at your worst, He loved you. When you're messing up right now, He still loves you. Tomorrow, He's still going to love you. It has never changed. His face, the love in His eyes for you has never changed. And Naomi doesn't understand this. All she understands is I've done everything I'm supposed to do and things didn't work out. Why is that? So Naomi doesn't understand God's love for her family. She's only served Him out of duty. And it's made her self-focused. So instead of rather providing hope for these girls, because she knows good and well there's kinsmen redeemers back home, she's got family back home, she can take them back and there's possibly hope for them. But she's lost her trust in God at this point, saying, look, I've done everything I'm supposed to do and it didn't work out like it was supposed to, like I had envisioned or I planned. Something else has happened. So now she's not really following what she's been called to do. So what does the world do when you can't give anything else? What do people do? They walk away from you. They leave. Because what? The world betrays you. Think of the prodigal son when he gave all of his money away and he had all his friends when they were out partying, when they were having this good time, and then his money ran out. What'd they do? They left him. Okay, that's all you had. That's all I needed. Thanks. They don't even give it a second look. And that's what Orpah is doing here when she walks away from Naomi. Naomi, she realizes, wait a minute, she's saying she doesn't have anything else to give. Nothing else. I'm just going to walk away from her. And it's important because this whole entire time, people are watching us. We are under the magnifying glass. Something in Naomi's life caught the attention of these two girls where they had to battle with her. Orpah lost a battle the second round. The second time she had to push her away, but not the first. So something was in her heart. And I thought about when we were here Thursday night, the Star Center staff who have sit here and watched us every Tuesday night for the last 3 months. And one of them, actually two of them, have come up, and one wants to come when we changed to Sunday nights. And she said, I want to come and be part of that. It's something I can see and want to do. And then the other guy, he's so sad because his work schedule won't let him come because he's actually going to join the military in September and he won't be here for the October switch. So every day we have to realize, just like Naomi's not realizing in these small moments when you think no one else is watching, when nobody else is there, they are watching your life. You are impacting them. And it impacted Ruth so much. The way Naomi had treated her, the way that she loved her, the way that her family had brought her in. She said this, but Ruth clung to her. That is awesome. She was literally shoved away 2 times, and she still clung to her. But we're not done yet. Ruth 1:15-18 says, and she said, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So a third time, Naomi steps up and she denies her call. The first thing that reminded me was Peter on the night when Jesus was betrayed. He stood up 3 times, and when everybody's asking, "Are you a Christian? Are you going to follow this Christ that you're seeing chained in the courtroom, in the courtyard? Are you going to follow him?" And he says, "No, I don't even know him. Never been around him in all my life." That's what she's experienced. Why? Because both Peter and Naomi were focused on the circumstances. Naomi's not understanding why her husband's dead. She's not understanding why her sons are dead. Peter didn't understand why the God of the universe was in chains. He didn't understand why he had been beaten. He didn't understand why he let them take him. He was only focused on the circumstances, and those circumstances controlled their actions. How does life circumstances control our witness? Does our tired schedule keep us from being able to make disciples? Does our difficult family keep us from being a good witness today? Think about that. But I want you to know, watch how true love wins out in our story. The true witness here is not the old veteran Naomi. It's the new believer. It's a new creation, Ruth, who is going to be the witness here. And Ruth's commitment to Naomi is just mind-blowing to me. She's willing to stay with someone who can't give her anything. And not only that, she's actually pushing Ruth away. She's saying, I don't have anything. Go your own way. But she stays. Pastor Matt Chandler says this about love. He says, "Love says, I've seen the ugly parts of you, and I'm staying." That's how God sees us. He sees every weak, vulnerable, sinful, ugly part of us. Parts that we don't even know exist yet until we're much more mature in Christ and we're saying, "Man, I was really broken, never knew it." This week, I thank God for humbling me and just continuing to break me in these areas and saying, "Look, you don't have it all together yet." It just keeps us knowing that we need Him. But He loves us anyway, despite the ugly parts. And then she says, "Where you go, I will go." And even though Naomi is going just through the motions of believing, she's just going through the work, she's just done what she's told. It's a social thing. You know, everybody back home was doing that. This is the way we do it. But even with that, even with the wrong motives, same thing Paul said, I don't care what the motives are behind it, when Christ's name is proclaimed, I'm going to rejoice. Why? Because those wrong motives still planted such a seed in Ruth. She saw a difference in Naomi, and it just transformed her heart into total love for Naomi. It's just a wonderful thing. As it talks about, don't be ashamed of the gospel. It is a power of God unto salvation. Even done out of the wrong reason, the word does not come back void. It does not accomplish what it's set out to do. It still works in people, even when we don't do it right. God is faithful in that. And I sympathize with Naomi, because 8 years ago, I was that person. I was that man going through the motions. I was just sitting there, and by grace, God woke me up out of that sleep. It was through a series of events that if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have woke up spiritually. But God just started pulling things out from underneath me, allowing me to hit my knees for the first time in a while, and realizing I don't have control. There's only one. There's only one worthy of praise. There's only one who can hold all this together, who's going to pull all this together. But what if I had that encounter? What if I had this big encounter and all these things happened, but what if I didn't receive Him? What if I didn't listen to what He was saying? What good would it have been? It would have had no effect. We have to receive what God is doing. We have to receive Him in our lives. That's the only way that's going to be changed. Every little moment. Naomi had three huge opportunities. They look small because it's just in a conversation. But she had 3 eternal purposes in this passages, and she failed every single one of them. And the beautiful thing is, God's not done with her yet. Even though she fell and flat on her face with her testimony, her witness, God is still after her. Now, let me change over to Ruth for a minute. So we have Ruth, who is just clinging on to Naomi, just loving her beyond imagination. And I think of her great-grandson, King David. Think about, this must have been passed down, this type of commitment, this type of love through her family, because another great story of this kind of commitment and friendship was through David and Jonathan. David, like Jonathan, his dad was King Saul. King Saul wanted to kill David. But Jonathan and David, their friendship is even talked about today. We were even watching a show the other day, and they were doing dance, and they used the Jonathan David story as the dance. And it was just how these 2 friends were, through all this, through battle, through life's horrible circumstances, they were still committed to this friendship. And it's huge, because faith is passed down. We have to live it in such a way that people understand this is Naomi's faith. At one point, she knew it and was in her heart, and Ruth saw it. And she's clinging on to it. And Ruth just did a great job passing it on down. And then Ruth's next lines are produced from this commitment. And we often use them in wedding vows. Even today it says, "For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. And there will I be buried." Simply put, till death do us part. That is real love and commitment. And only death will separate her in her mind. There is no plan B. And the reason we use this in marriage today when we counsel or teach, it's because in Ruth's mind, there was no other option than going with Naomi. And if marriages, if newlyweds or even long-term married couples would grab this, that there's no circumstance under the sun that we get a divorce or that we ever split it up. There's nothing that you can do. We'll work through it. We know who to go to. We know that God is in control, and we're going to do it His way. Man, we would have such a great family dynamic in America and the world today if they would just grasp this kind of commitment that we are not going to go back. There's no plan B. There's no other option except we're going to walk in together and we're going to reconcile whatever's going on. And out of this painful but beautiful encounter, Naomi gives up, and then they return to Bethlehem. So it's another great parable out of the New Testament. It says, like the persistent widow, Ruth just continued. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay with you. And Naomi gives up. Okay, let's go. And continue in verse 19 through 22. So the 2 of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty." Blaming God. "Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So the whole town is stirred. And we don't know why. There's a few different things. I read through commentaries, and everybody had speculation. Maybe they were just happy to see Naomi. Her name was Pleasant, so she must have been just a great lady. This is Naomi. She's come home. It could have been stirred up in a different way. They could have been really grieving. This is Naomi who just lost her husband, her 2 sons. Death has struck the family. They could have been stirred up, not really happy that Naomi's bringing home a foreign daughter-in-law. Wait a minute, God said we're not supposed to marry outside. You're bringing her home? We can only speculate why they were stirred. But to me, the important thing that I didn't see in any of the teachings that really stood out to me was Naomi's witness. Naomi's name was known. She was not just affecting her family, but the whole city knew who she was. She knew them, and as soon as they heard that she was coming, they were stirred. That's how much effect. That's a huge word, that they were stirred inside and it was bubbling up, that they could not contain it, is the way the Greek talks about this, or the Hebrew talks about this, that they just had to come out. It had to come out. So there was great emotion. So not just only was she effective of ministry in her own family that we saw with the encounter with Ruth and Orpah, but her own city. The whole city was affected by her. And I was thinking about Tacoma. Tacoma needs us to cling to it like Ruth is clinging to Naomi right now. Even when we're pushed away by everybody we witness to, when we're pushed away, that's what they need. That's what they're looking for. They are trying to test us. Are you real? Are you what you say you are? Do you believe what you believe? Is it true? And they're going to push away. And the only way, just like Naomi, she finally just gives up. You know what? You love me. There's nothing I can do about it. So come along. Come along for the ride. And like Naomi here, there are people who are full of potential. I think of Sherry shares this in a lot of testimonies, and she shared it with me once. But a lot of people have come and asked her, how can you hug the homeless person? How can you just walk up on the street and just love them? And it really touched me because it was from the heart of a mother. She sees that 60-year-old person in ratted clothes and needle marks in their arms, smelling like alcohol. And she literally says, you know what? God lets me see them as a baby. That a mom is sitting there holding them from day one. And this is not who they wanted that person to be or to grow up to. And I just see them as that baby that mom is holding. And that is what we have to do, is we have to see them, that they're full of potential. But they're returning home like Naomi, empty. Life has used them up. Nothing left to offer. What are we going to do? We have to cling to them, even when they're pushing us away. They need hope. And the only hope that there is in this world, through everything, you guys have lived it long enough. If you've lived more than 10 years, you know that there is no hope in this world apart from Jesus in our lives. It has to come from Him. And God intends to use you and me to bring this message to Tacoma. It's to bring hope to the city. That's why we're here. That is why there is still breath in our mortal bodies. That's why He's not taking us home. So when we think back, do we have that rapture mentality? God, just take us out of here. It's too hard. They don't want to hear me. You know, I look at the mission. There's 300 guys here that I can't minister to every single one of them. It's too hard. It's too overwhelming. God's saying, stop. I know. That's why I'm here. It's why there's hope in my name. Call upon me and see if I will not do what I've said. And this little passage shows me that Naomi was, again, a social person. She was known by everyone. And this is why I really feel compassion to Naomi, because I remember these days when I grew up in a works-based atmosphere, and everybody really liked me. I was very pleasant. I was the good son because I did the right things. I said the right stuff. I cleaned up my plate. I took the trash out, whatever I needed. But imagine, this was her identity from the time that she was born to the time that she left. I was liked because I was seen that God loved me because of the works that I did. And now she's coming back believing that God punished her, that He did this to her. I did everything I was supposed to, and God brought this calamity on me. And possibly, if we know anything about the Jewish history, those guys were really ruthless. If your life was out of control at all, man, you must have sinned. You've fallen out of the grace of God, and you get what you deserve. If you were sick or if you were poor, you're getting what you deserve because of sin in your life. So they probably weren't very friendly to Naomi. What have you done was probably the first thing they said. What did you do to anger God? And she hadn't done anything. So she reverts to another flesh tactic here. She goes into to gain attention. Instead of being the good girl, she becomes this manipulating, whining woman. And she goes, call me Mara, meaning bitter. I was brought down by the Lord. And this is how self-righteousness works. It's woe is me. It never points to the Lord. It always points to myself. Like, don't even focus on what God's doing. It's all me. I'm the one that messed up. Woe is me. I'm hurt. I'm bittered. And our only mission is to point people to Christ. That's our one and only mission. So this has to be a sad state to be in when you've lost one's own self-righteousness. Do we relate any way to this? Is there times when everything's kicked out from underneath us and we are feeling just totally bitter toward God for the circumstances in our lives. And the beautiful thing is we can repent from that. We can turn away because we know through Scripture, through what God has shown us, from the time that we were sinners when we didn't even recognize His name before we were even born. I think about that all the time. Before I was even on this earth, Christ came and died so that I might be set free, that I don't have to be a slave to sin anymore. I don't have to be bitter because I know we're in a falling world because we've caused it. It's our issue. And Ruth doesn't realize that yet. And the main character of the story is Ruth, but behind the scenes you will see that God is not only going to redeem Ruth, but He is aiming directly for the heart of Naomi through this whole story. Ruth is just a tool for God to get to Naomi. He's after her. He wants that heart to be back to His. And I think about this from the time He saved Lot and those two daughters 1,000 years before to bring us the land of Moab, and through that He brought Ruth. He was planning this. Through saving Rahab and Jericho, He brought us Boaz. Like He is not forgotten one small instance. He hasn't forgotten one detail or circumstance. He is planning all this perfectly to do what? To redeem Naomi, to restore her. Everything that the world has taken from her, He wants to bring it back and give it to her even more. So as we end chapter 1, you're going to have to come back next week because the harvest is ready and romance is in the air. And we're going to find out how literally, as Boaz is kind of a representative of Jesus Christ in our lives, how He comes after us, how He pursues us with great love, with beyond our measure. He comes back to what? He draws us to Him like a great lover. And Boaz is a smooth operator, for sure. So the question I want to leave here tonight that needs to be answered, will you cling to Him and go where He leads you? Like Ruth was clinging to Naomi. Despite all the harshness and the pain, despite everything the world throws at us, will we leave and follow God and understand true love for the first time? I'm ready to follow Him, no matter what. And this week, like I said, I've been tested. Will I submit? Will I still follow Him as lead? And I say yes. And will you guys follow? Tim Keller is a popular Christian teacher. He puts it this way: to be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our own self-righteousness, and fortifies us for any difficult life or any difficulty life can throw at us. So as we go through the story, it seems bleak in this first chapter, but the next 3 are just a beautiful romance of how Boaz is pursuing Ruth, but it's a mirror image of how God is pursuing us. Will you join me in praying tonight?